this conference. You know, I think one of the things that's been most difficult in this campaign has been getting information out to people. And so what you're seeing is what I would characterize as kind of classic politics, that my opponent has labeled me as a liberal rhetoric, that she says that, or others have said that I have a hidden liberal agenda. And, you know, my response is, like, where'd I hide it? I'm out in the public. I've written numerous newsletters. I've talked to people, and I've made available my phone number. I've told people the other day I was on a radio show, and I said, here's my cell phone, and it's not going to my office. It's coming to the phone that's on my hip. And so I think that, if anything, I want to continue to advance and to show an interest in what people have to say. So the handout that you have there, what you're going to see is I'm taking directly from my opponent's campaign ads. And that's some of the things that she has stated. And I'll reference you to the second page, right at the very top, where she has said that she has proven leadership. And so let's take this systematically, one after the other, about this. And let's look at the first claim. Led the work on the ordinance prohibiting the sale of synthetic marijuana, and that the selling of synthetic marijuana in Lubbock would carry the highest maximum fines allowed. Well, Ms. Gibson may have led the work on the ordinance, but it was my involvement with the city attorney's office that brought forth the research articles on the substances involved. I do not recall her attending any of the multiple meetings that we had at either the Board of Health or in collaboration with the city attorney's office. My final report ran over 180 pages, while the ordinance that was drafted was developed from other cities' ordinances that serves as models of action. Do the citizens of Lubbock want leadership that merely copies what others have done, or do they want someone who actually creates understanding and action? Number 2, work to lower the debt of the city. Now, while she may have worked to lower the debt of the city, it would appear that this has had no effect whatsoever on the outstanding $1.2 billion debt, which has remained quite steady. In fact, at the February 27th meeting this year, my opponent voted to add an additional $92.5 million to the debt, with 72.8% of that being in certificates of obligation, and $27.5 million of that in revenue bonds. This additional debt was added while the city had an increase of $24.7 million in new revenue. So one might ask, you know, who is the tax and spend candidate in this election? And I would argue that I'm the one who's come out and said that we shouldn't just continue to spend the money that we get new, but we should look at it as to ways to apply to the debt. Now the next one is a very interesting one, because she said she's worked to lower homeowners' base rate bill. Now, the base rate was indeed lowered. And while the usage rate was increased, which actually caused the utility bill to go up. And so we've seen a $2.5 million increase in the water department revenues from 2013 to 2014. And so I would call this really a bait and switch characterization, in that she can sit there and say we lowered the base rate while increasing the usage rate, which means your bills are higher. And anybody who doubts that, please let me know if your bills have gone down on your water or on your electric. So I would just say that as she's talked about this, that in fact she noted on the radio this morning that while the council reduced property tax, it was necessary to raise fees to cover it. Okay? She talked about looking, she talked about working to reduce fees, but folks, talk is not action. Okay? So I think that it's disingenuous to sit there and say, well, gee, we haven't raised property taxes, when everybody knows that all the fees are just going through the roof. Now, she led the way on improving the conditions of the homeless through zoning not only that benefited the homeless, but businesses in the Mahon Library. Now, this is, I think, the most painful part of her comment, because she was responsible for the ordinance that temporarily stopped the practice of ordinary citizens preparing meals in their home kitchens and then offering it to the homeless. She initially voted to close the health department in 2011. She voted to reduce Citibank's hours of operation and routes while raising the fare. Now, she acknowledged on the radio today that her action to relocate the Godeke Library was only a short-term solution. She said that today. Now, she has been supportive of the finish-out costs of the new location, which have been estimated to be as much as $250,000. But she did not address the buyout option, where the taxpayers really don't know what the final cost is going to be. So in 5 years, by her own admission, we're going to be right back in the same boat, paying more and more and more for a library when we should have done it right in the first place. Now, I think that this is an expensive fix that really doesn't fix anything. Now, she said she's never voted to raise taxes except when it was first approved by voters. This is not supported by her council record. Creative financing is a term where my opponent states that she will not raise taxes, even while admitting that she has voted for increases in the hidden taxes of increases in franchise fees, user fees, license fees, and so many of the grabs at the citizens' money without calling them taxes. Did you know that less than 10% of the city debt has been voter approved? As new revenue comes in, $24.7 million in 2013, this has been swallowed up for new projects as opposed to being considered in debt reduction. Sort of like your kids in college or off at school. Do they ever get enough money from you? Have they ever said, Mom, Dad, I don't need more? They just spend and spend and spend, and I think that's the case of my opponent. Now, she relates that 3 issues are central to her campaign. She says this. She says that the first, government transparency, is her absolute commitment, yet she will not participate in any public debate with me. Now, she did appear beside me in one debate where the public was not allowed. She did not attend the one public debate held last week, and she did not respond to 2 questionnaires that were sent out to all the council candidates. Now, why would she not place herself in public view and let the voters know where she stands on the issues? The second issue of protecting taxpayers gardens her view that she is finding ways to tighten the belt of city government. In a radio interview this morning, she stated that a correction was in order by me, and I will admit to that, and that she wanted to acknowledge that she had only voted for $251,000 of $1.4 million that was given to the North and East Lubbock Economic Development Corporation. So by this admission, I think we can assume that what's $250,000? You know, that she says it was based on faulty information. Well, don't you think our leadership should take time to study the issue and make informed votes? You want me to stop?
Yes.
Okay, I'll wait just a minute.
Sorry about that.
Got that tape up?
Yeah.
All right. Let me just start over the whole section. Okay, wait a second. The second issue of protecting taxpayers brings her view that she is finding ways to tighten the belt of city government. Now, in this morning's radio interview, she wanted me to make a correction, which I will gladly do, in that she said that she only voted for $251,000 of the $1.4 million that went to the North and East Lubbock Economic Development Corporation. She said that after that vote, that she felt that she had voted based on faulty information. Well, 2 things occur to me. One is, does she not think $251,000 is a significant amount of money? Is the excuse that, well, it's just a little bit? I guess it kind of all depends on what kind of people you run around with and how many homes you have. In my sense, that's a lot of money. And I think that she needs to do better study of her issues and not come back and say, well, I didn't really understand it. You know, nobody really likes that. Nancy Pelosi, we got to vote on it to find out what's in it. And I think the citizens deserve better leadership than that. Now, we also know that she has shown undying support for over $9 million in annual funding to Market Lubbock and Lubbock Economic Development Alliance. Mm-hmm. She's identified herself at the previous council meeting 2 weeks ago as extremely pro-business, and her voting record shows an unmistakable support for big developers while the ordinary citizen struggles to pay their bills. Her protection of taxpayers involves burdening the citizen with higher usage rates and other fees that hurt no one while they hurt them. I believe that the best way to protect taxpayers is to work toward an informed citizen. I believe that the Electric Utility Board should be an elected board with a change in the city charter. My opponent wants to keep the hands of the council in the day-to-day operation of LP&L. If we return to this plundering of the purse of LP&L by the council, as happened in the past, we will face bankruptcy of that valuable resource. I believe that protecting taxpayers means exploring new options in the provision of police protection. My opponent has stated support for a new central police headquarters that will cost hundreds of millions of dollars. I believe that consideration should be given to a smaller, centralized police headquarters with creation of smaller precinct police stations that provide for more efficient police presence across our city. Now, whether my opponent calls it a monorail, a light rail, whatever she wants to label it, potato, this is not the time to get drawn into an expensive pie-in-the-sky project. Federal dollars may flow at the earliest point of such a project, but make no mistake, the taxpayers are going to get stuck with a bill down the road in long-term maintenance and operations. We can't afford it. The third issue with her claim of fiscal responsibility, where she has claimed to not raise taxes unless first approved, well, you got to realize that this use of the hidden taxes is where she's raising them. That we witness how we see this increase in these taxes from $19 million to $29 million in just the last 5 years. Meanwhile, we witnessed the property appraisal creep. Mine's gone up about $10,000 this year. That's minor for my home in District 5. And if one takes these three forms of revenues together that generate finances for the city, property tax, sales tax, and hidden tax, we would have a tax rate, property rate of $1.23 per 100 evaluation. Now let me tell you, that would put us at the top of the pile when it came to debt on our citizens. I believe that we should be honest with the taxpayer and work to have them in the loop for the decisions on how revenue is generated, projects funded, and strategies to deal with the debt. While she labels me as displaying liberal rhetoric, it is a true distortion of my small business record as well as my proposed solutions to our problems of water, electrical generation, and debt management. This attempt to put fear into citizens while hoping that our own record is not examined is an insult to the people of Lubbock. Lubbock knows my family. Lubbock knows me. I was born here with roots that go back over 80 years. I have a long history of public service and smart leadership. The citizens of Lubbock deserve better than a person who talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk. Her attempt to smear me with inaccurate labels is classic politics that counts on the voters not paying attention. I believe that you, the voters, once you pay attention and perform a side-by-side comparison between us, that I am the candidate to deal with the city's issues and help us to get past these next 4 years and into the future. Thank you very much.